Scatter brushes can be created from virtually any piece of artwork, including, now in the latest version of Illustrator, images. Let's create a couple of scatter brushes so you can see how they work. Now, beginning this video with the scatter.ai file already open on my computer. And I'm going to start by coming over here to my brushes panel. And I have some artwork on my artboard that I want to make into a scatter brush. So it's pretty easy to do. I'm going to go ahead and select this piece of artwork, the star, and I'm going to drag it and drop it into the brushes panel. Now, this displays my new brush dialog box where I can choose the type of brush I want to create. And in this example, I'm going to go ahead and create a scatter brush. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that option. And now it's presenting me with these scatter brush options. So I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call this LBV scatter brush. There we go. And up here at the top, I can control how I want this piece of artwork to be scattered. So let's just look at something real quickly. If I leave it at the defaults and I click OK, you can see that if I grab my paintbrush tool and I make sure that my brush is selected, I can go ahead and drag to draw a path, and the scatter brush is going to go ahead and follow that path. Now, what I'm going to do here, so you can kind of see what these options are going to do, I'm going to double click on that brush to open up my scatter brush options. And this is the way that I like to modify my artwork because it allows me to see what these settings are going to do. So for example, if I turn my preview on, I can come up here and I can change the settings. So for example, right now the size of all the stars are fixed. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. And so you can see I can choose random, pressure, stylus wheel, tilt, bearing, and rotation. Now, many of these, such as pressure and bearing, are related to using a stylus with a tablet. So those options are not going to be relevant for using a mouse. But I'm going to go ahead and choose random. And now as I drag these sliders, you're going to see that the artwork is going to start changing, or I should say updating, to reflect the changes that I'm making. So I'm basically specifying how small I'm allowing the stars to be, and then how big I'm allowing the stars to be as well. So I'm actually going to pull these down. I don't want these to be too large here. And then I can adjust the spacing, and the spacing has the same properties. So I'm going to choose random, and then I'm going to start adjusting the spacing. So pull this down to bring them closer together, and pull this down as well. So you're basically setting the minimum and maximum here. So that looks pretty good. Scatter, I'll set that to random as well. And then you can control how much you want these stars to basically scatter on each side of the path. And then your rotation, you can also set that to whatever you wish. And that's going to allow me to rotate these in various ways. Now, for the rotation relative to, you can set that to the page or to the path as well. So you'll have to choose which one you prefer depending on the rotation method that you choose. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that set at the current settings. Now, down here for colorization, this is where it gets a little bit interesting because you have several options available in your drop-down menu. Now, this little guy here gives you a nice little tip and kind of shows you how the colorization is applied. And the important thing to note is that your current stroke color defines what's going to colorize these objects. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and you'll notice that if I choose tints, that this is now going to tint these objects using that particular setting. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and you'll see it asks me if I want to apply this to the current strokes or leave the strokes as is. So I'm going to go ahead and apply these to the strokes, and you can see how the colorization method changes. Let's go ahead and go back in there. I'm going to go ahead and now change this to tints and shades. And now when I click OK, I'll go ahead and apply it to the strokes. You can see that now you have, instead of it being like a global tint, it's utilizing the stroke and fill, or basically whatever's in the artwork, to tint the different elements differently. Let's open up that one more time. And I also have hue shift. Now, what does that exactly mean? Well, with hue shift, you need to choose a key color. And so you can see that right now my key color is set to green. And by default, the key color is going to be chosen based on the most color that appears in the brush that you created. So right now, if I go ahead and click OK, and I apply it to the strokes, we can see how it's adjusting the hue based on that key color. And if I go in here again, and I change my key color, and I do that by clicking on the eyedropper, I'm now going to change my key color to the orange. Go ahead and click OK. I can only choose key colors from the art that's in there. And if I apply this to the strokes, it's now going to change it to the other key color that I chose. So there's a lot of options that you can choose when creating a scatter brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and command click on this path to delete it. And then let me show you one other way, which is a new feature in the current version of Illustrator, is to create a scatter brush from an image. So this is an image that I placed on my artboard. And if I go to the window menu and choose links, we can see that it is embedded. And that's the requirement for using an image in a brush, is that the image is embedded inside of Illustrator. And you want to keep in mind the size of this image is certainly going to affect your performance, depending on your computer and other variables. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And now to make this into a brush, I just drag and drop, choose my scatter brush, and now I have the same options that I can choose. So I'm going to call this the LBV image scatter brush. And we could pretty much perform the same task as we did with the first one. I go ahead and click OK, and with my paintbrush tool selected, I'm just going to go ahead and paint a little bit here. And now if I double click on that brush, now I can start adjusting the properties. And again, I find this to be most useful for adjusting these. So I can change the randomness here, I can alter the settings, maybe adjust the spacing a little bit. There we go. And then let's do the scatter. We'll set the scatter to random as well. And you can see, now here's the thing. With your colorization method, it really doesn't matter what's chosen here. Even though we can choose different modes here, so I'll go ahead and pick like a different color. For an image such as this, because it's pretty neutral, we're not going to see anything. But quite honestly, these colorization methods don't really apply to your brushes. Even though I apply them with an image brush, you're not going to see that colorization method applied. No matter what kind of colorization I choose here, even if I choose tints, you can see my stroke is orange. When I apply it to the strokes, nothing really happens with image brushes. So as you can see, not only can these scatter brushes be incredibly powerful and artistic, but they're a lot of fun too.